Friends, rich dicks walk amongst us, and it's our humble duty at Means Morning News to name them and shame them. So let's get to work. Thanks for all the nominations on social media. Rona mixing it up a bit this week, not nominating landlords, but nominating DC Mayor Muriel Bowser for authorizing the eviction of a homeless encampment in McPherson Square, which actually is something a landlord would do. So I guess this does all fall under the category of a goddamn landlord. But in case it doesn't, we also had a couple nominations explicitly for landlords. Thank you for these. Got a nomination here for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, or as Trump is calling him these days, Meatball Ron. You absolutely do not have to hand it to him, but Trump was on his game when he came up with that nickname for DeSantis. If there's one thing I'm looking forward to when it comes to the GOP presidential primary, it's DeSantis melting down after he's called Meatball Ron over and over and over again. Next up, we've got several nominations for freight rail company Norfolk Southern, involved in at least 2 train derailments in the last 2 weeks, possibly more by the time this show airs. Probably the most deserving rich dick of the week, but we've covered them pretty extensively and shamed them earlier in the show, so we'll give someone else a chance. Related to the derailment in East Palestine, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was also nominated. Hard to think of a cabinet secretary who has presided over more disasters in their portfolio and done so little in response to them than Mayor Pete. Just a shockingly incompetent display over 2 years as failures in the nation's transportation system cascade. And finally, a couple nominations for Queen Turf herself, J.K. Rowling, a person who has used their power to push vile transphobia of the sort that is leading to people dying, literally dying. Young trans kids taking their own lives or being murdered in hate crimes by people motivated by the same kind of bigotry that J.K. Rowling has now devoted her life to. All while she lives in a fucking castle. What an awful human being. Very deserving of a rich dick nomination. Again, thank you for all these suggestions, but in the end, this week's rich dick is... Yep, it's Elon Musk. Oh yeah, it's a classic. The rich dick that all other rich dicks aspire to be. Thanks to Union Brian for the nomination. We've spent some time covering Musk's latest antics this week, like when he fired an engineer at Twitter because they told him his tweets aren't getting as many interactions because he's just not that popular anymore. And when Musk threatened to fire other engineers at the company unless they tweak the algorithm to ensure that his tweets get boosted 1,000 times more than anyone else's on the dang website. But what really puts Elon over the top this week was his straight-up union busting. On Tuesday, Tesla workers at a facility in Buffalo, New York announced they were unionizing. They work on Tesla's autopilot software, and they detailed how they're subjected to persistent surveillance by the company, which often pressures them to skip their breaks. Well, the very next day, one day after this union campaign was announced, Tesla fired dozens of employees at the very same Buffalo facility. Several of the workers terminated were involved in the union campaign, including one that actually sat on the organizing committee. The union, Workers United, filed a complaint with the NLRB, alleging the company illegally retaliated against workers for protected organizing activity. And this appears to be a pretty egregious example of that. But it wouldn't be the first time Musk acted like a union-busting dick. The NLRB has already found he has broken labor law at other Tesla facilities through illegal terminations, coercive tweets, and anti-union dress codes. But because the penalties for union busting are little more than a return to the status quo and a slap on the wrist, they're not much of a deterrent. So guys like Musk become repeat offenders, and more brazen about it too, like firing dozens of people within 24 hours of them getting involved in a union campaign. And let's also not forget that the reason Musk is so rich and famous is because he's selling a big fucking lie. The promise of a fully operational self-driving car. In fact, we were reminded of that again this week. Tesla announced the recall of more than 360,000 cars, the company admitting that its new full self-driving feature might cause crashes. Yeah, According to a recall report from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, quote, when a Tesla vehicle is operating with a software version of full self driving beta, as described below, and with full self driving beta engaged, certain driving maneuvers could potentially infringe upon local traffic laws or customs, which could increase the risk of a collision if the driver does not intervene. According to the NHTSA, when self driving is engaged, the cars have a tendency to fly through intersections on yellow, also travel straight through intersections from a turn only lane, and not come to a complete stop at stop signs. Musk is basically using all of us as beta testers for Tesla's self driving software, and that includes those of us who don't even have Teslas, because we have to share the road with these cars and help the AI learn how to drive, often with disastrous results. According to the NHTSA, Teslas running on autopilot were involved in more than 270 crashes during the course of the year between 2021 and 2022. There were a total of 392 accidents involving self-driving cars during that time frame. Tesla was responsible for nearly 70% of them and responsible for the majority of fatalities and serious injuries. These cars simply should not be on the road, and Musk should not have anywhere close to the amount of money and power that he has. But we live in a land controlled by rich dicks, and Musk is back where he belongs among them as this week's Rich Dick.